Oh, it's on now. It's on. I turned it on. I think we're live. Sorry. I'm waiting for Coach Diana and she hasn't come yet. So we're having a little bit of a tech issue. Welcome, everyone. We're going to go live in just a second with Instagram. Hi, Instagram people. Let's go live here. And Diana, I'm not sure where you are. I hope you can show up as soon as possible. We have an important topic to talk about today. And I don't want to have to do it all by my lonesome, although I can if I have to. Hi, Instagram folks. We are going to talk about this topic here. Suffering. Suffering. Who is experiencing some suffering right now? It could be big suffering or little suffering. It could be big suffering like, oh my gosh, my marriage is ending and I don't know what to do and I don't have a job and my kids are hurting and I feel my whole life is falling apart. It could be big suffering like you just got a diagnosis of cancer or someone you love died. Or it can just be little suffering like you can't fit in your pants this morning, and or someone criticized you on Instagram, or someone said something that you didn't like, or someone disagreed with you. It can be little suffering. Your kids are unhappy with you right now. Welcome, Diana. I'm so glad you showed up. I wasn't sure how you could. There was a tech problem or something, right?
There was. I couldn't get my camera on, so I'm here now.
Okay, thank you. So I started. So we're talking about what's the difference between formative suffering and deformative suffering. And those are big words. So let's just start with the simple suffering truth. Suffering does affect us. Suffering does impact us, and it often changes us even in the moment. It may not change us permanently in the moment, but oftentimes we get crabby, or we get hopeless, or we get scared, or we get what happens to us in suffering. It affects us, it shapes us, it changes us. And the question we want to ask today is how does your suffering typically impact you? Does it change you? We talk about formative or deformative. Does it typically help you to become a stronger, more resourceful, more resilient, more capable woman? Or does it tend to cripple you, which would be deformative suffering, making you feel angry and helpless and hurt and not able to cope and frustrated and stuck? Which direction do you tend to go to with suffering, whether it's in big chunks in your life or little minor chunks like, Diana, where are you? You're not showing up on Facebook Live, and I'm going to have to figure out how to do this all by my lonesome today. So, however suffering shows up for you in the moment, and sometimes they can just be tiny little moments that really get the best of us, right? Sometimes the big moments, at least for me, I recognize as those sacred moments where I have to really, shore up my spiritual life. But those little moments of suffering can really drag us down.
Oh, I totally agree. Talk about suffering. I'm suffering trying to get here on time and get everything set up because I traveled today to be live with you all. And yeah. And so how you respond to suffering makes such a difference, doesn't it? How we talk to ourselves about it. We have some choice in all of that. And
I want to stop you right there because this is really important. You said how we show up during suffering. We have some choice. How many of you believe you have a choice? Because this is crucial. Because we don't tend to believe we have a choice. We just believe this happened to us and we just reacted. There's no space for us to recognize that we have a choice about how we're going to handle our suffering. How many of you agree that you recognize you have a choice, and how many of you feel like, oh no, I don't have a choice. It just happens to me and I just blow up, or I just shut down, or I just react, or what happens to you? Right? How many of you recognize you have a choice,
I
whether it's
think
a little ding or a big ding?
yeah, and I think it's really easy, especially, and I've been stuck in these places too, where I'm watching everyone else and their life to me looks easy. It looks great. And I think sometimes it's easy to have the mentality that suffering is not a part of life and it shouldn't be happening. And as you, I think, said a little bit earlier, it's inevitable. And so for me, a part of the choice is just accepting that suffering is a part of our journey.
Yeah, and so let's be really honest with you, lady. I think one of the things you can count on from the LV and Co team is that we're going to be really straight and honest with you, and really going to help you to figure out how to dig out of this mud that you're in sometimes. Because the mud that we get in with suffering is a question that we ask that's unanswerable. It's not really answerable. Like, why? Why is this happening to me, God? Why are you
Mhm.
allowing this to happen to me? And remember, people asked Jesus that question. Remember when the man was born blind? And they said, Jesus, why was this man born blind? Who sinned, him or his parents? Who did something that deserved God's punishment on this man, right? And Jesus
Yes.
said, neither. That's not the right question. And then remember, Jesus himself asked the question when the Tower of Siloam fell and killed all those people. Was it the Gentiles were worse sinners than the Jews? And Jesus said, no, that's not the right question to ask when you're suffering. Why is this happening to me?
Mhm.
Because you'll find a reason, and it's usually not right.
We don't often know the reason, and it's just like with anything in life. If we want the plan, we want to know what the outcome is going to be, what the future looks like, and we're not given those details. That's why it's called a faith walk, and trust. We're trusting that God has good toward us, right? That's a choice.
But if God has good for us, the big question secular people ask is, well, then why would a good God allow us to suffer? And I'm going to
Mm.
tell a story that God woke me up to this concept 45 years ago when I had a baby. So I had a baby and we were coming home from church and it was pouring rain, it was windy, and he was in the back seat in the car seat. Car seats were just invented back in those days. People didn't just carry their babies, but we had car seats and we were, very strongly told to keep our kids in the car seat. So he was hungry and he was screaming his lungs out to be fed.
Mm.
And he was in the back seat of the car seat. He was suffering. And he was looking at me like, Mom, you're right there. Your boobs are right there. Why aren't you taking me and feeding me? And I'm like turning back and I'm saying, I can't. It's dangerous. It's too rainy. I can't even go to the side of the road and pull you up because I don't want to get hit by a car. It was just too dangerous. And so,
Right.
but he was a baby. He couldn't understand that. He couldn't understand that. And
Um,
so, as I was distressing as a mom over his suffering, God spoke to me and he said, Leslie, that's just like you and me sometimes. You're crying because I'm not meeting a need. You're wailing, I'm hungry, God, or I need more love, or I need more safety, whatever I need that I think I need from God. And I'm wailing to God. And he's not indifferent to my wailing, but he's not answering my prayer for relief because of another purpose that I can't see and I can't understand. And it was like, that was really powerful for me in that moment, Diana, to understand that God's ways are not my ways. And even if I could tell my infant, hey, honey, the roads are bad and, it's raining and I can't feed you right now he was not capable of understanding. He was too little.
mhm.
And I was just too little to understand God's ways.
You know, I think, and I can't. I'm trying to memorize this verse, but memorizing verses takes me a little bit longer in this decade of my life. But one of the verses that God gave me early in this year is, "Don't be surprised when you face fiery trials," and that when we do so, we're partaking in the sufferings of Christ. And if we read Scripture, we see a lot of suffering. Why would I think anything different? Why would I think that life should just be easy, right? Even in the small things.
We do think that, though. We think life should be easy, life should be fair.
Right, right.
And so we get upset when life isn't easy and life isn't fair. And then we start going down the Y train. And so, can we, as a group, if you want to learn how to do suffering differently,
Yes.
can we agree that Jesus is right when he said, hey, folks, in this world, you will suffer?
Mhm.
Big ways, little ways. Sometimes it's not fair. Sometimes it doesn't look fair. One person, I see a person in my life right now who's gotten an unfair pile of suffering, an unbelievable unfair pile from the person she was born to the life she grew up in, to the parents she ended up with, to the husband she ended up with, all of the above. She's just had bad, 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 bad. And it's just hard to grasp, right? It's hard to grasp when someone suffers so much pain how God could allow that in their life, right? I get that. I get that.
Mhm.
But can we agree that Jesus tells us this world is made up of sinful people who will do sinful things to others? It's made up of imperfect systems who will be unjust and not share resources fairly and all of the above. Can we agree that Jesus warned us that this is how this world operates? It operates on a power over imbalance. and that oppresses people unjustly. Can we agree that this world is not the kingdom of heaven? This world is the kingdom of the dark, and we will have suffering.
I think you make a great point, and one in which I've been pondering a lot lately. Evil is rampant. This is a spiritual battle that we're engaged in for those of us that are called by the name of Christ. And evil wants to steal, to kill, and destroy our lives, and sometimes in very insidious ways. And sometimes he uses suffering in our life, and sometimes that suffering comes through others.
Yeah. And so then again, we ask the question, well, God, why would you allow my father, who was the pastor, to abuse me? Or God, why would you allow my mother, who you put me in her womb, and yet she was an alcoholic? I would ask that question. And so this
Mhm.
why question can get us tangled, and it can move us into what we would call deformative suffering. And what would deformative suffering look like? Put some words in the chat. How would you describe deformative suffering?
Good
How would you
question.
describe deformative suffering? Put some words in the chat.
What would that look like?
What would deformative suffering look like?
I know
Yeah,
all suffering is painful, but what's deformative about suffering? What does it do in us or with us that makes it deformative?
yeah. In Instagram, Kim is saying, we don't grow when life is easy. We
Mhm.
coast. We don't see God when we are happy. Well, speaking for myself, after the suffering, I hope I will be different and see God all of the time. You know, it's interesting, Diana, as we're putting this in the chat, I was thinking about suffering, and then I also came to prosperity. And how does prosperity can also deform us, right? So we want the easy life. We want all the money. We want all the love. We want all the
Mhm.
sunshine and roses and lollipops. But that can make us very lazy, indifferent to others, selfish, greedy. I mean, so prosperity can deform us in some of the same ways that suffering can deform us. So it's not just the bad stuff that can deform us, the
Exactly.
good stuff that can deform us as well, because it can make us blind to God. The rich man is the hardest one to get into the kingdom of heaven because they don't believe they need God. They're self sufficient.
Exactly. And I have thought this, that success, whether it's financial or notoriety, that you don't have, can be a gift from God because he knows how it would shape us, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it can be his protecting hand over our life. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So,
what do you see?
deformative, let's look at some definitions. What does deformative mean? Resentment or self pity. So, you're getting deformed as your character is
Mm,
getting shaped, right? Your
yeah,
character is getting shaped by life. And when there's too much sunshine, it can be shaped into like a selfish, greeting person. And when there's too much suffering, it can get shaped in a bitter, victim mindset person. You tell yourself, Deborah says, no hope, nothing's changing, I'm resentful. We bleed on each other, raging, unforgiveness, holding offenses, retaliation gets you off center, doubting God. Yeah, you got it.
so
That's deformative suffering.
yeah, believing lies, engaging in defense mechanisms that aren't healthy for us just to try to survive, leaving you hopeless. I think, for me, I think of the word sifting. Like the enemy wants to sift us until we're hollow inside and there's nothing left. We have no faith. We have no hope. We disengage from others. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So deformative suffering is Satan's goal, right? So if he's going to bring a hardship into your life, and God's going to allow it. God allowed hardship in Jesus' life. He allowed hardship in Job's life. He allowed hardship in Mary's life. I mean, he could have waited till she married Joseph before she got pregnant. There was hardship there, right? There's hardship. Joseph in Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, had all kinds of hardship, and his suffering, he suffered. We don't want to minimize that. We do suffer. Paul suffered in 2 Corinthians 4, but he's saying, I'm keeping my eyes on my suffering. Yes, this momentary light affliction, it's painful, and I've got an eternal lens of how God is forming me and my character. And so those are the things that we want to practice, and I'm going to teach you how to do this in
Mhm.
2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, Thursday, December 4th, I am going to be doing a entire 1 hour free workshop. And for those of you who've attended my workshops before, you know that they are full of great content. They are full of the how-tos. How do we actually do this? We can't explain this. You know, I'm a chart person, I'm a graph person, so we do slides on the internet. We take it off social media so that you can have the privacy to really do some work on really changing your mindset from why is this happening to me to perhaps why is this happening for me? That's the shift for formative suffering, right? That I have a teacher here in this suffering. I don't like her. I don't like breast cancer. I don't like divorce. I don't like a narcissistic husband, but he is my teacher right now. In our last Facebook Live, Diana, actually the Facebook part didn't show up, but we were talking about this, and we were talking about how could a bad thing be our teacher,
Mm.
right? And if we
Oh
look
my
at it that
goodness.
way, how does that help
Mhm.
us? Explain that. How does a bad thing become, if we can see it as our teacher, how does that help us?
Well, we talk about consequences. When something happens in your life and the Lord allows it, he allows it for us to look up. He allows it for us to draw close to Him, to get quiet, to ask questions. And there's a challenge in that because it's really easy to grab what's tangible, and to grab defense mechanisms in unhealthy ways, but it's really our opportunity for some deeper growth, asking some deeper questions, gaining some greater resources. And you know what? Boy, that's how we're refined, Leslie. I don't like it. I always say it's hard. And if I could choose it for myself or anyone else, I would say I would rather not. And yet the Lord uses it.
No one chooses the school of suffering. That's why God just throws us in it. If
Yeah.
he asked us, we would say, no, thank you. Do not want to go into the dark night. I do not want to go into suffering. So please don't feel like, God's going to ask your permission for breast cancer or a divorce or any of those kind of things. He may not. But what does this person have to teach me? Or what does this suffering have to teach me? It teaches me a lot. This world is not my home. It teaches me that I've, you know, perhaps allowed myself to be harmed because I didn't know how to have boundaries. I didn't
Right.
know how to say no. I need to learn how to do those things, or I'm going to get another teacher in the next relationship because
Right.
God wants me. It is God's will, not for you to be in a perfect little bubble of a life. It is God's will that you mature and live a holy life. If we to take all of God's will from his word into one sentence, that's it. It is God's will for you to mature and live a holy life. That may include breast cancer. It may include divorce. It may include a child that dies. It may include, hard financial times. Those suffering things are the shaping of your character. And you get to decide whether it's going to be formative and I'm going to become more and more like Jesus, or deformative, and I'm going to become more and more bitter and resentful. And if you're struggling with that dilemma, I encourage you to come to our workshop in 2 weeks. I put the link for it. You have to sign up because we have to send you a link, because the workshop is not on Instagram, it's not on Facebook, it's not on social media at all. It's on a private webinar site so that we can really talk honestly about what we're suffering without feeling like someone's looking at our feed. And so please sign up. Go to leslievernick.com/ all one word, join workshop. Join workshop. It's just my name.com, join workshop. And you will get a notice, and you'll also get a pretty decent workbook that will give you tools to use after the workshop is done so that you can continue your growth. We are also going to be opening up our 6-month coaching program in January for those of you who might want help in actually doing it with one of our coaches. But the webinar itself is free. It's all teaching the information that you need to actually practice what we're talking about. You might need some help practicing it, and that you could decide to join our group or not join our group and just do something on your own. Either way, you need the information to create the transformation. If you're stuck in deformative suffering, why is this happening to me? This is so unfair. I can't believe God loves me if he acts like this. And this is deformative suffering. And this is Satan's will for you, to turn you into a bitter spirit, to make
Mm.
you ugly inside, to make you hate instead of love, to hold grudges instead of forgive. And you might have every justification for why that's a good thing. Look what it's happening to you. It's deforming you.
Leslie, and circling back to the word choice, um, I think many of our listeners are enduring suffering because they're in destructive places, destructive relationships. And what I love about what you're going to be covering is what is suffering that enables you to draw closer to God? And how you mentioned the word boundaries. Like, how do I become wise about what I allow and what I don't allow? Because if you're in a harmful relationship, many of you have been told that it's holy and it's a worthy sacrifice for suffering. And so it can get a little confusing to make those choices in terms of what I allow in and what I allow God to work in me and to use to conform me to his image, and what I say no to.
Yeah. And so this is really important. So if we talked about choice, and the other thing we talked about is mindset. So if we're stuck in mindset of why me and why this, and I have no choices, then we're going to be shaped by that. And I'm going to give you lots of practice in the workshop on how your choices, right in the moment, we're going to tell stories and how your choices, am I going to go right or am I going to go left? And your choices impact the next chapter of the story. And we're going to practice that right in the workshop so that you really get how this works. All right. So that if you're still like, how does my choice make a difference on how the story goes? It makes a huge choice, even when you're the victim.
Yes.
Even when you're the victim, it makes a huge choice of how your story goes. Once you recognize I do have choices, I might not like all my choices. So my choices are, hey, am I going to cave in to a destructive husband and do what he wants? Am I going to be a pawn in his controlling game? Am I, so that's suffering. Am I going to, but it's a deformative suffering because you're actually shrinking as a person. You're not becoming the person God called you to be. You're becoming the person your husband wants you to be. Is that what God wants? No, he's
Right.
not your God. Your husband's not your God. But you could choose to do that and you will suffer and you will shrink and become more and more deformed from who you were supposed to be. Or you could stand up in a good way and say, hey, I've got some, you don't have to say this out loud to him, but I've got some boundaries. I'm not going to allow him to decide my identity. He may think I'm a loser. He may think I'm not a good wife. I know that I'm a good wife because I speak the truth in love. I care about his eternal soul. I care about his well being, not enabling his sin, right? Just like for kiddos. You care about your kids because you take their iPad away and you don't let them sleep with it all night. They hate you for that. But you know that you're being a good mom. They're telling you you're a terrible mom, but you know you're doing the right thing. Same with a helpmate. If you're speaking the truth in love to your husband that I cannot live with someone who prefers porn to a healthy relationship, that's your choice. You get to decide how you're going to be, but I get to decide how I'm going to be. And I'm not living with that.
Right.
What might that happen? It might create more suffering in some ways, but are you getting stronger and healthier in your story? Your marriage story may end, and maybe not. Maybe not. I shared this story before, but I'm going to share it again. Just a couple weeks ago, I was in Nashville, Diana. I don't know if I was on with you and I told this story, but I was speaking in Nashville at an American Association of Christian Counselors conference. And didn't have my badge on. I was walking through the atrium, and this man, this gigantic man, he must have been 6'7". He was really big and tall and big. And he said to me, "Are you Leslie Vernick?" And I'm always nervous when someone asks me that again, because I'm not sure if you're a friend or foe. But I figured this is a public place. He's not going to do anything bad. So I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I just want to thank you." And I said, "For what?" And he said, "Because my wife listened to you and she finally called my butt on the carpet for my adultery and said, I'm not willing to live like this anymore."
Right.
And it woke me up to the kind of man I wanted to be. That I saw strength and dignity and love in her. I didn't see hate and resentment and retaliation. I saw love in her in a good way. But she wasn't going to put up with my crap anymore. And it motivated me to deal with my stuff. That's the kind of suffering God wants to form in you for you to be a warrior wife to your husband. And no guarantees. Most of them do not do what this man did. I just want to be full transparency. Most of the men go find another girl they can use and abuse. If you're not going to be willing to be that girl, he'll find another one. right? And that's why you're so shocked. I can't believe he found another girlfriend so bad, because you were just an object to him. You weren't the person.
You
But you
didn't fit the bill, so he found someone who would.
Yeah, so you have to be
Mhm.
the person. But if you're in a destructive marriage, don't let the church leaders deceive you into thinking
Exactly.
that your suffering is a noble sacrifice to stay silent, small, and submissive and scared in a marriage. That is not God's will for you.
And I want to say, Leslie, that it might not necessarily be your spouse. Maybe it's a child that is mistreating you, that is causing harm to you, or a parent, or a friend group. And this isn't just about spouses that we endure suffering, but sometimes we're in really unhealthy places and we feel disempowered and that we don't have a choice. And that is not what God intended for us. He intended for us to minister to other people, but to be in deep, connected relationships with healthy others who can walk arm in arm with us and help us to endure the suffering and point us to Christ.
Yeah. So God wants you to be a God centered woman. This is his will for you to grow into your, he put a seed in your mother's womb of the potential he created inside of you. Paul
Mm.
tells young Timothy to fan into flames the gifts that God has given you. If you are in relationships where you are being squashed and managed and controlled so that you can't grow, it's like a flower trying to grow through the cement. And you can do it, and you should do it. But don't let them crush your flower because they're your husband or your parent or your boss. That is not God's will for you. And so that suffering of crushing is meant to teach you, hey, this is not a healthy relationship. I need to set some boundaries. I need to find some sunshine. I need to get into a different environment so that I can flourish.
So there's two things. A couple questions to ask ourselves are, how am I responding to this suffering? And if it's a relationship that you're suffering in, how is it shaping Christ-like character in me and fostering my dependence on God? Is it refining my faith or deteriorating my faith? And I know you want to teach our women the choices that you have in that and how to clearly discern what choices to make.
Yeah. And this is the tricky part. I think we get so nervous about choices because we think we have to make the right choice.
Absolutely.
But we don't have to make the right choice. That's never in God's will that you must always make the right choice. What he says is, I will instruct you and guide you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. So let's play a story. Okay, let's do a story.
Okay.
You're at the crossroads, and before GPS, before you had a phone that told you which way to go, you didn't know which way to go. We grew up in that generation. Those of you who are younger, you have no idea what we're talking about. But let's say you're in a crossroad in your life. And do I stay or do I leave? Do I turn right
Mm.
or do I turn left? I don't know. I don't know. Well, what would happen if you made the choice to pray and discern God's will? And you said, you know what? I think I'm going to stay. I think God's calling me to stay. God hates divorce, whatever you've been taught, all of that. And so that's mostly what people do, women who we work with do. So you choose to stay. But I'm going to work on me. I'm going to learn to be healthier and stronger because that is God's will too. So I'm going to stay in this relationship and I'm going to start speaking up for myself and I'm going to start setting some boundaries. Okay. So let's say you do that and he gets worse,
Ah.
right? He gets worse. He gets more controlling. Instead of being more covert, now he's more overt and he's spiritually berating you for being the unsubmissive, ungodly, who you're listening to Leslie Vernon voice, in your head, right? And he's scaring you. What does that information tell you about your choice to stay? It gives you information, doesn't it? I will instruct
Yes.
you and guide you in the way you should go. And so, as we make choices in our life, in our story, and we make the best choice we know to make in the moment, and we grow in the way that God calls us to grow, we're doing formative suffering. We will have more information. Just like if you went to the doctor and you had a breast lump and you said, okay, my next right choice is to go to the doctor, and my next right choice is to get a biopsy, and my next right choice is to get information about that and make decisions, right? So you will get information to know what your next right choice is, right? Just take tiny steps. The book of Ruth is a really good example of her taking tiny steps forward. She didn't know the outcome. She didn't know she was going to marry Boaz. She didn't know any of that. She just took the next right step. I'm going to go with my mother-in-law back to Bethlehem. We're hungry. I'm going to take the next right step. I'm going to go out and pick some grain. I'm going to take the next, and she's suffering. She lost her husband. She's lost her family. She's lost her whole culture, and she's hanging out with Ruth. Hanging out with Naomi, who's bitter and angry, and she's deformative suffering, right? And so she's hanging out with company that's not a good influence on her, and yet she's going to be strong and take the next right choice. And she does. And it so happened that God is in that as well. And so we don't need to live afraid. We don't need to walk afraid. What if I do it wrong? You don't have to worry about that. If you're doing it wrong, God will give you information to correct yourself. Just like when we didn't know which way to go and we went left on the road and we said, oops, nope, the church isn't this way. I better go this way, right? We just turn around. We don't beat ourselves up like, oh, I'm so bad that I made the wrong choice. We just accept that we're human. We don't have omniscience. And God says he will direct our path.
He is so good. And I love that you say that. We are so impatient. We're impatient in suffering, and we're impatient with guidance. And what you said is so true, Leslie. We have watched so many women walk this out, and we have walked this out ourselves in some ways in our lives. And when you say one step, often we want the big answer, right? We want to know what it looks like when we're gone, and will the kids be okay, or all of those questions. But it is literally a faith walk, one step at a time.
Right. And I love the verse. I don't have my Bible right here with me, but Proverbs 20:24. I think this is the verse. It says, I'm going to paraphrase it because I know the second part of it, but I'm not sure the first. He says, take each step with God and don't try to understand everything along the way. And I love that because we don't understand everything along. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. He promises that. If you're a God-centered woman, so in suffering, it's very easy to become a situation-oriented person. This happened to me. This is who I am. I'm a victim, blah, blah, blah. That's not who you are. It's just what happened to you. And it's valid. It's hard. But who you are is what you do with what happened to you. That's your story. And if you let it be deformative, that's your story. So if you want to change your story, change your life, sign up for this workshop not next Thursday, 2 weeks from today, because we are going to give you the pathway, each step, the verses that go with it, so that you can be confident in becoming a God-centered woman, even in the midst of big suffering, little suffering. How are you going to write your story? If we look at all the movies that we watch that we love, Frozen, the story is of suffering.
Yes.
And redemptive suffering, formative suffering. Anna was changed. Elsa was changed for the good because of their suffering. Joseph was changed. Esther was changed. Ruth was changed because of their suffering. But they participated in that story. They weren't just passive. God just didn't zap them and they changed.
I guess the other thing I am compelled to say is it's not just going to be a webinar. You're going to be with a bunch of other women who are walking similar paths, and you're not alone. And that is so huge. I just rewatched Wicked, and I love the song when they're singing. They're in their relationship. They were both changed for the good, and that's what we desire for you. Is for you to be equipped, for you to be supported, for you to be empowered to change for your good.
And I love that. Here's the stories that we love in the movies: Gladiator, Frozen, Wicked, is always about adversity, suffering.
Yes.
That refines us into gold, right? We love those stories. We would hate the movie if she turned out really to be wicked. We wouldn't have liked that story. And the good witch turned out to be some sort of bubble blonde that had no mind, right? Or no heart. But that's not how it turned out. each of them grew in the ways that they needed to grow in their character through adversity. And so God is loving enough to trust that we will trust him, even if he allows hardship in our lives, in order for us to become the warrior women, the women of strength and dignity. We think about the women in the Bible who did some amazing things. These were women who were strong, of good character, who trusted God in the hard. They had hard, and they trusted God, and they did the right thing. They didn't kowtow to the authorities in charge. I think of Esther, who stood up to her husband when he could have slayed her. She took that chance and she stood up. He could have slayed her. He was the king, right? Or the midwives, the Hebrew midwives, who stood up to Pharaoh and didn't kill the babies that they were ordered to kill because they saved Moses. They did the right thing. Their suffering was formative in shaping their character. And if that's something that you want, and you want to get some steps and some support on how to do that, please, please, please sign up for the workshop, because this is so critical for Christian women to learn. And we don't learn it in Sunday school. We haven't learned it in our church well. We've learned to be good wives, but we have not learned to be strong women. There's a difference.
It is way too easy to become disheartened and to lose hope and to alienate yourself in the midst of suffering. And we need one another and we need good tools. We need mentoring. And I believe that this webinar that you're teaching, Leslie, is a great mentor for all of us to really understand, comprehend, gain some tools, and to walk together. One of my greatest visuals is, well, I've been called to empower women, and one of my greatest visuals is just us locking arms and walking together, just doing the journey together so that we're not alone. Because God, you have said this and others have said that we are broken in the context of relationships, and we heal in the context of relationships. And so you don't have to endure your suffering alone.
And I love that locking arms. So I grew up in a generation where we used to play this game. We probably don't play it anymore because kids don't play outside like they used to. But we used to lock arms, and we would play this game, Red Rover, let, Diana come over. And you would run with all your might, and you would try to break through that group. And if you were standing alone, she would knock you right over. But because you are linking arms with other women, she can't break it. She can't break it. And so part of our invitation to you is come to the workshop. Don't just sign up and watch the replay. Come to the workshop. Give yourself a couple of hours just for you. In a busy season, December 4th is a busy season, but you are important. And this could change the story of 2026. It could actually change the story of December 5th if you show up at the workshop on December 4th, because you will learn how to think different, how to feel different, how to recognize, where do I have choices here? How do I make good choices here? What are my choices here? And how does the story go differently if I make this choice or if I make this choice? Let's just do it right now. And if you have a question you want to ask us, put it in the chat right now so that we can answer them. So let's say you're sitting in a traffic jam. That's minor suffering, right? Minor suffering. You want to go get your hair cut for Christmas and you can't get to the hairdresser on time, or you got to go to the bathroom, whatever it is. You're sitting in the traffic jam and you're suffering, right? What's your choice? You can't get out of the traffic jam. So what are your choices? Put it in the chat. What are your choices? Because you could change the story of how the traffic jam goes for you.
Yeah. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's happening in your body?
Right. How are you gonna manage the story of, I was sitting in a traffic jam and I almost peed my pants, or I couldn't get to the hairdresser on time? How are you gonna create that story right here, right now? Here's the start. Leslie was sitting in a traffic jam and she was going to the beauty parlor and she couldn't get there and her, bladder was full. And how does the story go? Do you see that you get to be the main character in your story? You can't control the traffic. You can't control the adversity. You can't control the weather. But who can you control? You. Yeah. So you have choices. How are you going to be in this moment? And then, depending on how you are in this moment, changes the next moment.
Absolutely.
And the next moment. So if you choose to take a deep breath, like Kayla says, and turn on a great podcast, if that's what you choose to do in this moment, and accept that I'm not going to get my hair cut today, and maybe I might even pee my pants, right? If you accept that you're human and there's only so much capacity you have, how might the rest of your day go? Versus if you're angry, I can't believe this happened to me. Why is this always happening to me? I can't stand this. This is so unfair. And you get stuck in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It affects your whole day, depending on the choices you make in adversity. That's the difference between formative suffering and deformative suffering.
I like to bring in the word curious. I like to be curious about why God is allowing this now. And sometimes I think, Leslie, like maybe I'm stuck in a traffic jam because I'm avoiding hitting a deer or something like that. We never know.
Yeah, that was put in the chat. Maybe the Lord is keeping me from something worse. You don't know.
There you go. Yeah, I didn't even read that. Yeah. We're thinking the same.
You know, I had a situation where my son was about 2 years old, I think, and he was in my bedroom or something, and we had a ladder against the wall because my husband was fixing a light and he just didn't put the ladder away. And I don't know what happened. The dog knocked into the ladder, and the ladder was coming down over my son.
Oh, mercy.
And I could not get to him in time. And the ladder has these rings, and so he was small enough that the ladder fell over him, and he was right between the two slats. So it didn't injure him, but it could have killed him because it was, a heavy ladder coming down. It could have hit him in the head. And the Lord said to me, there are lots of situations like that in your life that you will never see, that I prevent you from accidents, that I save you from harm.
Yes.
And you never see them. Angels took care of him in those moments. And I didn't see an angel, but I saw that he was in the right place at the right time. A 2-year-old moves very much, and he was there, and the ladder came down. So you're right. God often protects us from what we didn't do and didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes,
so here's a question that we have.
Okay.
So we do have a choice, but how do we make sure we make a good choice?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think it all starts with God. It starts with my attitude towards him. Making a good choice for me, Leslie, means that my heart is surrendered to doing God's will in my life, and that I'm choosing to be thoughtful, mindful, considerate, and waiting on him. Making a good choice also, if I'm waiting on him, I'm listening. And sometimes I don't like what I hear. Sometimes I don't understand what I hear, but if I feel God prompting me through his word or through other means, I'm going to choose to obey.
Mm-hmm.
And then I make the choice, and then we discover. I always say, people will say, well, God told me this or God told me that. And I remember my pastor saying, God never spoke to me that way. Because we don't always know. We don't always know until hindsight. Oh, that was the Lord. We can't clearly distinguish, but we do the best we can.
And we want to make this choice in alignment with Scripture. So if I choose to kill someone out of revenge, we know that's not a good choice, right? So if I choose to hate, that's not a good choice, right? Because God tells us to love our enemies. And so we want to know our Scripture to make the best choice that we can make. But if it's an uncertain choice, like, do I stay with this man? I don't know yet. So I will choose yes until I get more information. And when I get more information, then I know, nope, that's not possible. And I have to leave. Just like Esther made the choice to make dinner for her king husband. And then when she was having dinner, she said, this isn't the right time to tell him, right, about what Haman's doing. So he said, well, what do you want, queen? And she says, I want you to come to dinner tomorrow night. She didn't make the perfect choice. She just made the next right choice. Yeah. And so don't put that burden on yourself that you have to know exactly. Again, when we trust God, he will direct our steps. He will direct our steps. I do see a question in the chat that I want to answer. She says, please help us. How do you deal with X? Feeling he gets away with it, this wickedness. Help us know what to say to ourselves. And I think the best passage, I don't have my Bible with me. I don't know if you, Diana, if you have yours, but Psalm 71 is really a good example of that because David got caught right in that. He said, God, why are you letting the wicked get away with it? It's not fair. And he was all distressed over that. And then there was a transition. He said, until I entered the sanctuary of God and I saw their end.
Mm.
And so there's this transition of I got caught in it should be fair and why are you allowing them to get away with it? And there's lots of passages in scripture where people are upset that people are getting away with evil. Don't put yourself in a category of like, why did I think this way? Everybody thinks that way. Like, why didn't this kid person get put in jail? And why is there no justice? And why blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, God sees, God knows, God judges. And if we get caught in the why is this unfair now story,
Mm.
it will take us in a downward spiral, I think, into deformative suffering. What do you think, Diana?
I agree. I also think that's what lamentations are about. I think we can lament to God. I like in Luke talks about the parable of the persistent widow, and she prayed for vindication. I think that we can entreat God to help us. We can pray that He would vindicate us in those situations, and I think we're to wrestle with that with God. We know what the end of the wicked is, but yet I think that's a conversation between me and God. Like, to work out my pain and suffering in prayer to Him. Scriptures clearly indicates that wicked is evil and alive in this world, and I think for me, Leslie, that's the promise of the future. Like the new heaven and the new earth, we're going to be free from that. It is really just a part of this life, and so with the wicked, I think we can continue to invite them to change, and we invite them to see God, to know God, but we put up a shield. We don't allow them in to harm us any further.
There's a verse in Daniel, and I'm glad you corrected it. It's not Psalm 71, it's 73 in the chat. Thank you. But there's a verse in Daniel that says, the wicked will continue to be wicked. And so I don't think wicked people change. And here's the difference. So maybe pay attention to what you're seeing in your relationships, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We all sin. We all mess up. We all do some horrible things sometimes. But most of us are not happy about it. Most of us feel like, oh, I can't believe I did that. That's really wrong. I feel so bad. And I might be caught in a trespass, like caught in a bad behavior, caught in porn or caught in, something, but I'm not proud of it. Right? The wicked actually are proud of it. The wicked are proud of their misdeeds. The wicked like hurting people. They like fooling you, getting away with evil. There's a different character formation in the wicked. They are deformed. They're like Satan. They like to hurt you. They like to mislead you. They like to get away with evil. They like to cause harm. They like to oppress. And they're not going to change because they would have to give all that up. And so the wicked will continue to be wicked. And there are wicked people in this world. The Bible tells us that. Jesus warns us. There are wolves in sheep's clothing in the church. Wolves are the wicked in the church that pretend to be sheep or shepherds. And they're not. So it's important for us. In Hebrews, it tells us it's important for us to discern
Exactly.
good from evil, truth from lies. And why is that important for us to discern? Because Satan can dress up as an angel of light. He can pretend really well to be good. And that's where we need discernment and not to just throw our trust willy-nilly to anybody.
Or be naive about it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for putting the verse in here. So if you have a question about formative suffering, put it in the chat because we would love to take the next 10 minutes to answer them. I think we've answered any question that came up. But what I'd like you to do right now is, what is your takeaway from today? How are you going to be more conscious of your choices when hardship comes your way today? It's going to come. God's going to give you a practice session. He's going to give you a practice session today on hardship. How is that going to help you remember, oh, I attended this Facebook Live or this Instagram Live, or I was on YouTube and I saw this. What is your aha moment to practice today when something dings you or crashes into your life and you would call that suffering? How are you going to think about it differently? What choices are you going to make? What is your takeaway from today? Write it in the chat. I think this is really important to prepare yourself, because now you just got it. You got a head lesson. You're going to have a heart application, right? We don't seal it to our character on a head lesson. How many of you, today's Thursday, how many of you remember what your pastor talked about Sunday? Right? Just listening to information isn't enough.
Absolutely.
Right? You're going to have to practice it. And so God's going to give you an opportunity to practice it today. I promise you. So what is your takeaway? So Lauren's saying, I have more agency than I remember. It is holy and right to advocate for myself.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Coming to a very long year of a divorce, a wicked man, still struggling with both of these topics today. Okay. So Amy, I'd like you to ask yourself, what is God saying to me to practice today? Right? What is it for me to listen to today?
Here's one. Why is normal to think, but his deep work must be done? And the betrayer addict must do that. He has to acknowledge and take accountability for his actions, repent, and change.
Yeah, and it's not just the addict that has to change. We may have to change too, because on one hand, this person might be incredibly selfish and incredibly mean and incredibly evil and wicked or troubled or whatever they are. And then on our hand, we might be naively trusting. We might have no boundaries. We might not have a no. We might be a people pleaser. We might fear man. The fear of man is a snare. And so their sinfulness looks so much more wicked, right? This looks like a good Christian woman, but it's not a healthy Christian woman. It's not a healthy Christian woman. And so one of the things in our ministry is that we don't just focus on his bad stuff. We look at, hey, what is this teaching me that I need to learn? Maybe I need to learn that boundaries are important to God. God set boundaries in the garden over Adam and Eve. Boundaries are important to God. And my well-being is important to God, and I'm to steward that. I'm not to just give that to my husband to steward. I'm to steward that. And if I'm being harmed in this relationship, I need to be prudent. The prudency, danger, and take refuge. I have some things to learn here. So it's not just him, it's also you.
I like that, Leslie. What is my deep work to do? This is happening to me now. What is my deep work to do? Yeah. How is Christ using this to conform me? All right.
So here are two questions. Here is one. How do you find the middle ground between being naive and being cynical?
That's a great question. That is a really good question. The middle ground between being naive and being cynical. I think cynical for me is an all or nothing. I've adopted a cynical attitude toward God, toward others, and I don't see good when it happens to me. Whereas they said naivety, right?
Mm-hmm.
And naivety, and I was going to say this earlier, I think many of us have been taught to believe that someone has your best interest in mind. For me, that's the epitome of naivete. And naivete is not recognizing that evil exists, not recognizing when it comes at me, and just kind of having kind of a lackadaisical, what do we call it, a mamby-pamby kind of,
Pollyanna.
Pollyanna, that's a great word. Yeah. So for me, that's how I would define that, Leslie.
Yeah, I think that's a really great definition. Here's one more. What if we're not sure our spouse is wicked or not due to narcissistic behaviors? I'm not throwing the word around easily. I don't think it's up to you to decide. I think it's up to you to understand the impact on you. So it might be that your husband is neither. Maybe he's brain disordered and he's got a brain tumor. Okay, let's just say that he's got a chemical imbalance in his brain, or he's got an actual brain tumor that's making him run around the house with a knife trying to stab you and the children because he's so paranoid. The prudency, danger, and take refuge. I don't think you have to understand the why he is the way he is. It doesn't give him a pass, or it doesn't mean that you need to let yourself be a victim. All right, if you're in danger, regardless of whatever his problem is his problem. That's not yours to solve. Your problem is you're not safe, you're in danger, you're being abused for whatever reason.
You don't need a diagnosis to notice and deal with the behavior that's occurring that's harmful to you.
Right. No, one does not expect their spouse to throw them under the bus. Yes, no, you don't expect that. That's what marriage is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the safest relationship in the world. If you don't have safety in your marriage, I don't care if you have great sex, you don't have a great marriage. right? So safety is the foundation. I trust him to do me good, not harm, all the days of my life. Love does no harm. All right. Those are the scriptural references of that, Proverbs and in Romans. So we want to understand that if you don't feel safe, if your husband throws you under the bus for whatever reason, you don't need to know the why. You just need to know the impact. If someone hits me and I'm in intensive care because they crashed my car, does it matter if they crashed my car because they were having a heart attack, or they were drunk driving, or they were texting on their phone? Legally it might matter in terms of their consequences, but for me, the consequences are the same. I'm in intensive care. And I need to get well.
And further, I would say, the comment is one does not expect their spouse to throw them under the bus. But if, maybe that's not what you expected when you got married or when you signed up. But if that's what's been happening to you, I would expect it. And I would accept the reality and the truth that's happening, because if you continue to be surprised by it, that doesn't enable you to action.
Right.
It doesn't enable you to protect yourself. But if I expect that I have a spouse who is wicked toward me and harmful to me, how will I take care of myself?
Right.
It puts me in the driver's seat.
And gives me choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. God is growing me daily, but I still think about the verbal abuse. How do I move on to forgiveness? So I would ask you to ask yourself, what is it about the verbal abuse that's still so sticky for you? Because people verbally abuse Jesus too, right? So it has an impact. Words are powerful. But if you are believing those words, or if you're questioning your character because of the person who said those words to you, if they called you ugly or fat or a liar or whatever they called you, not spiritual, I think you can bring those words before the Lord and say, Lord, is this true? What is true? If there's anything true about that, then help me to know that so I can change my character.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's true, maybe I am a little overweight. Does that bother me? It might bother him, but it might not bother me. I might be fine with it. I might be fine with it. And so you're not going to make everybody, they're going to say something. They said to Jesus, hey, you letting that woman pour all that expensive perfume over your feet. That's a waste of money. And they were right. And Jesus didn't care. Right? And so I think that's part of our growth, is saying, reckless words pierce like a sword, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And am I going to allow these words to define me or destroy me? Or am I going to listen to God's words? Who does God say I am? What does God say about this? We get choices of whose words we listen to, right? You have people on the playground at school. Some of them are bullies, and they say things ugly. They used to make fun of my name. My maiden name had a way to twist it to make it sound really ugly. And they would use it for me a lot. And it would make me feel really bad as a kid. But these were kids. That's what kids do.
Yeah, I think about verbal abuse and how that the question is, and how do I move on to forgiveness? To me, they're separate issues. Forgiveness is something I do based on obedience to God. I'm going to choose to forgive them. I'm not going to. That's for God to deal with, and the verbal abuse, I'm going to deal with in another way. Yeah, I'm gonna maybe protect myself. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to invite that in. I may use my voice and drown that out. I may not allow myself to be around that person or share my heart with them. So I'm going to take action to protect myself against the harm, and I'm going to choose to forgive them and put that in God's hands. So they're really mutually separate.
Yeah, exactly. Very good point, Diana. We have something in Instagram that I want to address real quick. Before I do that, tomorrow I'm going to do a Facebook Live on how do I live loved. How do I live loved even when life is uncertain or I'm not loved by my husband? And so I'm going to talk about that tomorrow at 10 o'clock, at noon Eastern time, 10 o'clock my time, noon Eastern time. So we'll be right back here, and I think I'm going to be by myself tomorrow, but we'll be talking about how do I live loved even when someone who I want to love me doesn't love me like I want them to. Okay. Mm. So here's what Lauren says on Instagram. My husband wants to be respected for his intentions, not his impact. So the impact on my heart is never addressed because he only rates himself on his intentions. And so this is a sneaky thing. Mm. But I would encourage you, Lauren, just real quickly before we have to go, is just say, so if you were driving distracted and you were texting or you were on the phone and you crashed into someone's car, would you expect them to just rate you on your intentions, or would you care about the impact that you cause them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think this is really an important point, that we have to stick up for ourselves. Yes, I can believe that you didn't intend to do this harm, but you did do this harm. And do you care about that? Right? Even someone has a heart attack while they're driving. They didn't intend to kill a kid when they did, but they did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And they may not have to go to jail for that, but you would think that they would show compassion for the impact that they caused.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what human beings do. And so your husband's trying to gaslight you into saying that you shouldn't be bothered because I didn't mean to hurt you, but he did hurt you, even if he didn't intend to.
Well
And
said.
this is where I think you need to stick up for yourself. Anything you want to say about that, Diana, before we have to run?
No, I agree wholeheartedly with what you shared. I think you covered it well.
All right, ladies. So it's so good to be with you. And I hope you learned a little bit about formative and deformative suffering when God gives you a chance to practice it today. I hope that you choose, hey, I'm going to grow through this. I'm not going to be beat up by this. I'm going to grow through this. I'm not going to let Satan win and deform my character. Thanks, Diana. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
We'll see you tomorrow. All right,
All
take
right.
care and God
Bye-bye
bless.
for now.
Bye-bye.